This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne, and we are on episode 120. And this week, we're featuring our conversation with Mike Miranda and Ruthie Unger from the Mammals and Mike and Ruthie.
Mike and Ruthie and the Mammals are staples in the Hudson Valley songwriter folk scene. And as we talk about in this, they're a link in the chain of that long lineage. If you are anywhere related to the folk roots Americana world, you understand the deep history of music coming from that part of the country. In that, they've worked with Pete Seeger, Arlo Guthrie. Ruthie's dad is Jay Unger, which if you don't know that name, you know probably his composition and his fiddle playing as being the theme song to Ken Burns' PBS special, The Civil War. The Mammals, Mike and Ruthie, are also critically acclaimed by New York Times, No Depression, NPR, Pop Matters, and on top of being fiercely DIY, releasing their own stuff, booking their own stuff, being their own publicists, running all of that, they also produce and put on a festival up in the Hudson Valley called The Hoot that happens twice a year.
Yeah, and we got to really talk in depth this hour about being that link in the chain of the traditions of folk music and the inherent political nature of folk music and kind of the expectations that can come with that and using your voice for imagining a new future. We talked about the practical side of being musical, creative, business life partners and the roles and duties, the divisions of labor, especially when you're handling everything in-house and the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, as always, there are topics that we touch on in this conversation that come as direct suggestions from our Patreon subscribers. That is also the sole way that you can financially support the production of this show, which is substantial even for a small show like ours. If you would like early access to who our guests are, some behind the scenes conversations going deeper on what we talk about, or the moral and soul filling satisfaction of helping produce this show, there's a link to our Patreon below in the show notes.
And if you're a visual person, this and all of our past conversations are available on YouTube.
So without further ado, here is our conversation with Mike and Ruthie, better known as the Mammals.
Thank you guys so much for being on. We're so happy to get to talk. I know Mike and I feel like have been talking about doing this with all of us for a while now. So happy to have you.
Yeah, this is great. It's fun to be here with you.
So we always kind of like to start with just how are you each doing today? And where are you physically and creatively?
Cool. Hey, how are you, Mike?
I'm great, Ruth. How are you, dear?
I'm doing good. I feel really full because sometimes we don't communicate about food and we both cook like an hour apart and then we both eat what the other person cooked. So sometimes I feel like we need to figure that out. That's a flaw in our communication this week. Just ended up eating sort of a breakfasty thing that I made and then a sort of lunchy thing that Mike made really right in rapid succession. So I'm feeling a little full. But yeah, I'm good. I think physically a little bit figuring it out, like energetically, like how to have enough energy to do all the things that have to happen. And recently quit a full-time job at the Shokin Center, which is a place that my family's been involved with for so long, and we're still deeply involved. We throw the Hoot, which is a festival that you should come play sometime. It happens twice a year, and we also are involved in some of the camps and events there. But for the past 7 years, I also kind of worked a job, at first really remotely from my laptop in the van, like helping with their mass email that went out once a month. And then it eventually built into more of a real organizational job and like building an events team and doing a lot and being very responsible. So right now I'm like decompressing, getting back into a purely self-employed relationship to that place and all the other places that we get to travel and do stuff. So it's really great, but it's also just different and new. So I feel that in my body a little bit, adapting to having my schedule be my own again, which is just more what I'm used to. I was raised by musicians right here in this house. I've always been a self-employed musician, touring, recording person, and it just feels more normal to me than like hours in a more scheduled type job. So
having that though, did that give you any sense of comfort or security financially that you don't find in the self-employed realm?
Yeah, it did. And that is like something that most people, I think, are raised to seek which I was not. So I enjoyed it in one way, but in another way, it always felt just really alien. I can't explain it. But there's something about kind of proving the concept time after time when you are an independent musician, where it's like every time you're like, can we book this festival? Can we book this show? Okay, we did it. Can we put on a great show? Will people love it? Will we sell merch? Will people buy a ticket? Okay, they did. And it's like, it's a circle of confirming it over and over that it's what you need to be doing, you know? Whereas I think if you just lock in a job and you're making X a year and you're like, sweet, done. I booked my one gig. And then you just like sit there and just have this kind of, it almost feels like an entitled feeling. I don't mean to be cold to anyone listening out there who has a normal job. That's awesome for you. Great. I just wasn't my thing. Like it felt like once you get the thing, then it's almost more like passive aggressive the way people have to prove they deserve the thing. It's not as just direct. Did they buy the, will that venue have you back or not? And then if it's good or it's bad, it's not the end of the world because it's not your whole gig. It's not your whole value in life. It was one night. It was one weekend. And then you can keep finding the more positive things if there was a negative. So it's like a collage instead of one painting. It's like a mosaic or something. It just suits me. I like it so much better. So yeah, there was more security, I guess, but it led me to feel more nervous. I don't know why.
I can understand that. I wasn't raised by musicians, but my dad was self-employed. He was a carpenter and contractor. So like the paradigm of being self-employed and the unpredictability of that, you know, how that fluctuates, that was the paradigm that I was raised in as well. And, you know, I've definitely gone back and forth and like, man, I should get a job. It'd be great to know how much I'm going to make on January 1st every year. Like, amazing. But then the other side of that stability and predictability is like, that is all that you're going to make financially and experientially. The lives that we live when your entire career is based on what you go out and create for yourself, be it art or events or whatever, like the potential there is limitless, you know, which is something that's really inspiring.
If you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a contractor or a musician, plumber, whatever, like there could be a moment where you're just like, I'm not going to that house anymore. I don't like that lady. I'm not going to fix her drain. And I'm going to go do something else today. Like you're a little more in control. Maybe that's underlying why I like it also, because I don't know.
Yeah, you have the power to say no.
Yeah, and it's okay. And it's not the end of their world or your world. It's like, find a better fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also really good to know just like what our personality is suited for, and then therefore what the most helpful situation to find ourselves in to be able to then do the thing we most love to do. Like we talk about this on this podcast, having diversification and financial well-being to be able to create. Like some people are much more comfortable with, like you said, the collage and being open and not quite knowing what's going to happen, but the excitement of that and like being less nervous having that versus knowing, okay, I have to clock in for 20 hours next week and I know I'll get a paycheck, whatever. And that we're all different. It's taken me a long time. I'm still not very comfortable with the ups and downs of self-employed life. I'm just like every other month panicked and then feeling great and then panicked and then feeling great. So it's...
Yeah, I think I just trust that it averages out. You know, you find like those incredibly great paying gigs that are sometimes like soulless and depressing, but they pay awesome. And then like those really wonderful soul feeding gigs that might pay next to nothing. And you just like find the balance. And then those unicorn gigs that are beautiful and pay, and you hold those very dear and you just keep working the averages.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, one thing I try to remind myself is that's normal no matter what business. Like that's normal for Amazon. We think, oh, Amazon's a behemoth, like everything's steady, but like they all have profits that go up and down and they make a lot here or not a lot there. I don't know what Jeff Bezos virtuously wants to sell to fulfill his soul and creative being, but it's probably not plastic stuff from China. You know what I mean? So
I mean, who knows?
It might be. I don't want to go there. But yeah, it's so much more tangible when it's you and your partner or just you. There's less shock absorbers there for sure.
Yeah. And like we have a band that we pay and we have a van that always feels like it makes more than any of us. And, you know, we have kids and it's not always super easy to figure it out. And putting out a record is a huge investment. And who knows if people buy them. but it's just the norm for us at this point. Mike, you talk as well.
How are you,
I'm
Mike?
wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, Mike is doing great. Look at him.
I am great. Especially these days, I feel like I live a very blessed existence. As you mentioned, as human beings, what makes us unique is our ability to create. And if you can make a career out of creativity, then for me, that's the whole game. That's winning. And we've been able to do this for quite a long time now. I guess the older I get, the less I take it for granted. I realize how unique in existence it is. And just to circle back to when Ruthie was working her 9 to 5, it was really fascinating being on the outskirts of that and just trudging along in my self-employed existence while she was all of a sudden having to be at the Tuesday meeting every morning and whatever. The Tuesday meeting every morning is actually what it felt like.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's a perfect metaphor.
Yeah, so appropriate.
Yeah. And yeah, it was great because I got to like show up and play the gig, but I wasn't as involved in like advancing the gig or.
But what was
booking the
interesting
gig.
is Ruthie brought the self-employed ethos to that job, in that if there was work to be done and it wasn't done by the end of the day, she would just keep working. Whereas a lot of her coworkers, 5 o'clock, they were out. And that's just not how musicians roll. Like, we just work till the job is done. For better or for worse, that's not always the most healthy way to approach the tasks at hand. But that is often what it takes to succeed, right? You just keep grinding, kind of 22 hours, as your podcast would suggest.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have the Mammals, and then when you aren't doing the Mammals, you guys have your duo project, Mike and Ruthie. You guys have 2 festivals. You have 2 kids. You teach at camps. You do a bunch of different stuff together. I'm not knowledgeable of the stuff that you guys do apart besides the Ashokan job. Can you elaborate on, as life, creative, parenting, business partners, have you had to have explicit conversations of like, okay, when do we turn off? When do we prioritize this is family time and we don't talk about work, or we don't look at our phones, or we don't check an email? Have you guys had to have those kind of organizational discussions, or has it been pretty natural to find that?
I think like the most important ones are when there's something that's like right in conflict, like a tour at the same time as like our kids' big recital or game or something like that, especially when you have kids that are doing things they're super proud of and they want you to be there. Like I said, my parents are both musicians, so like weekends were not like other people's weekends. I was always staying at a friend's house. My parents were never at the thing, you know. I shouldn't say never. They were, you know, like if there was a play I was in, they would probably make an effort. And I feel like that's the balance that we're doing too. We're not necessarily around every weekend to do everything, but the job that I quit is to literally drive our daughter to ballet and pick up her and her friends and go and do just the mundane, not even to be at the big shows, but to be transport and support, you know, to be like, you need a snack, you know, just really be mom. So that was an explicit conversation around like working that job was a lot of responsibility, a lot of stress for me, like on my mind and spirit, because I really love that place. I care about it deeply. And I'm really grateful to the people that ended up forming an events team that can do all the stuff. So it's still going and it's amazing. And I get to participate in somewhat more creative ways now. But I think part of that decision that we talked about was to have more time for both the kids and the music just throughout the week and throughout the day. Less strain, I think. Yeah, and you guys were just asking about like when to turn off, even just like at home or something. There'll be moments where it's like, Mike, have you stared at your laptop for enough hours, and can you now like go do something outside with kids, please? But it's not like a big conversation. It's just like, no, I actually have to get this thing to upload, or blah, 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 blah. You're like, okay, fine. Or like, yes, I'm putting it away. Let's go play wiffle ball or something.
Right. We are in a quote album cycle right now. So it's like the laptop work is especially intense these weeks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Basically for the rest of the year. But I've found a new rhythm in my day-to-day. Like my mornings are kind of sacred to me when I can. It's easier when the weather's nice, when you can get up early with the sun, go be outside and like just have a couple hours to myself in the morning to ease into the day and not just jump right on the phone, jump right on the laptop, which can happen very easily when there's things to do. But I've tried to protect those morning hours and just have them be for me. And then similarly in the afternoon, like if I really am diligent from 10 to 3, I can get an awful lot done. And then the kids get home from school around 3. And like Ruthie said, the kids are home. And like if the brunt of my tasks were accomplished, I can't wait to get off the computer and just like have my life and really enjoy it. Where I think 10 years ago, I would have felt more anxious about all the things I hadn't accomplished yet. I've been able to find a happy balance that is really working for not just keeping the train on the rails, but my well-being.
That's so real, though. The anxiety about not crossing off your list. You can organize your day and organize your approach to your list in a way that like you're okay to like put it down, whether it's incomplete or not. I've become much better myself at being able to leave my list behind, like especially this time of year when it's nice and our daughter gets home. I'm like, I'd rather be outside in the sun with my kid than doing whatever with the keyboard that I need to be doing.
We just got back from a trip to Greece, which was incredible. We got to play music and do a little teaching, but a lot of just enjoying being there. And we always launch Summer Hoot ticket sales on June 1st at 9 a.m., which happened to be 4 p.m. in Greece. So like, it was really funny. I was like sitting there doing what I normally do on my laptop to get it to go. But like in Greece and our room, and we had Wi-Fi and it was able to happen. But that was a really interesting day of balancing like all of that, because we were technically on like a gig, but it was also kind of a vacation. And one of those crazy days, and it all worked out. And there was only a couple typos in that first graphic, and got those fixed in 24 hours before we printed anything. And
we just had this West Coast tour that I've been working on for a bunch of months. Kind of fell through. The Anchor Festival gig that we needed, they decided they want to have us next year and not this year. So, which is, I mean, God bless them, they want to have us next year. But like, you know how it is, all those holds and all that routing that you had mapped out. When I got that email, this was just like a week ago, and I said to Ruth, and again, album cycle, you're trying to like capitalize when the record's fresh and new and whatever buzz you're able to generate and just
it'll be new for 3 years.
Well, that's how album cycles work for us. We've really rocked them a long time.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the West Coast run in February and March seemed like it was going to fall through. And I said, well, what do you think, Ruth? Can we actually cobble this together without the anchor? Like, I know it's kind of crazy, but you know, there's a couple grand here and there's a couple grand here, and like we might be able to thread the needle. And she's like, we could, or you could just go to all of Opal's hockey games in February. And that actually really made the difference, because I was already feeling bad about missing them. And she just reminded me, like, there's other wonderful things that we could be doing with those, those weekends. Because the weekends are valuable. And as Ruthie also reminded me the other day, it's like, we've done, as you guys have, like a lot of wonderful things for our kids, but they're not going to remember most of it that's already happened. They're going to remember basically like from now forward. She's like, so now is like the time to make it count.
I maybe did say that. I realized all the stuff we did, all the care that went into the years they do not remember. And
it's kind of heartbreaking.
When I think about it, I'm like, we were building the subconscious then, and the work mattered, but now we're building the conscious memories. Like, oh, okay. And it's not only out of concern for that, but it's like, you know, it's a thing, man.
That's a thing. Yeah, we like with our older daughter who's 4, she's not even that old. She'd spend time in the van with us. We like flew all over the country. We went to so many festivals. We went to Europe for like 3 weeks. We're like, that was awesome. No, she's doesn't even remember it now. She doesn't even remember it now. She remembers like us telling the story of it.
But I do think, I mean, and I know you're like saying this with some joking, like it does like build their character and the way that they perceive the world, like sometimes to a detriment. Like Georgia has grown up now these first 4 years feeling like everyone in the world is so welcoming and loving, and because everywhere she's gone, that's how she's been treated. And I've lately been like, she just walks off or runs off, like literally leaves parties we've been at where I'm like, where did Georgia go? And she comes back and she's like, oh, I just went outside down to the street to the car. And I'm like, you are 3. You're not allowed to do
and that's 2 blocks away. You just walked down the street 2 blocks away, and got your stuffy and came back.
We're not at a folk festival. Like, we're not.
Where like anybody would be like, hey, let me help you.
I was like, some random person that is going to pick you up outside is not going to be like the sweet teenage daughter of the folk band, like at every other festival that we've, you know. And I was just like, I didn't even know what to do. I just blurted out, like, someone could take you.
Right.
You could get hit by a car. And she looked at me and was like, what? No. But I mean, it is to say, I think the music business tells us that every opportunity is possibly our last opportunity. It gives us these messages of like, every gig, every tour, you have to say yes because you never know when that opportunity is going to come around again. And also time is always running out because youth is much more valued than middle-aged and older. So it gives you this idea that has to be priority if you want to be successful, and you have to sacrifice everything else. And I think like we each lived our lives that way for our 20s. And then I got pregnant at 34 in the pandemic, and life has continually changed in a way to show me that if that's true or not, I don't actually want to live that way.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is beautiful about having kids is where in the past, if we'd be like, we need some boundaries to help our well-being of like, don't work on Saturdays or don't work on Tuesdays or whatever, then something would come in and be like, well, but I can, it's okay. And it would just bleed over and we would just be working constantly. Where with kids, I find that it's much more like, no, this is not negotiable, because it's not like we're going to stretch ourselves thin. We're going to disappoint our child that we love, who we want time with and also wants time with us. And there's much more motivation to safeguard personal life and nurture personal life, at least in my experience, that has made music more enjoyable, although the pie of my time, there's less of it for music.
Yeah. I remember when we first had Will and he was a baby all the way up to Opal being 2 or 3. But basically the whole nursing years, it was crazy because early on as a band, I did a lot of the businessy stuff. Like I did the merch, I counted all the money, I paid everybody, I did a lot of the booking early on. And then slowly Mike took over those things when I was like super pregnant or nursing a baby, until it was like he was really doing all of that stuff. And I could just show up, be in a green room nursing, not even sound check, and then just like hand off this full baby to someone and go out and sing into a mic that was checked already by him just fine.
Yeah.
You know, like all those things I thought were so important. You were talking about the pie and like how many hours you have to do whatever. So we just had to become a lot more efficient with who could do what when, because obviously like tiny babies, they completely need your time and your literal physical body. So that was a real big shift. Yeah. And I think that is just something you learn from and breathe through. And I did want to say, even like thinking about the kids and what they'll remember or not, it's also the memories that I'm almost losing, like of when they were little and the stories that, like you said, like, am I only remembering it because we tell the stories? Will had this poem he did, I want to say in like the 4th grade, they had to write a poem, and his was so evocative, and it was about like van life. It was about being in the green room or the sound check and like being carried home from the van or something. I'm gonna like cry. It was so cute. He was the 4th grader with the poem about that. But besides that, I'm like, it's really hard to even close my eyes and remember them that small. Like the pictures and the videos that we have are gold, because it's like, wow, you really, even we forget it. So I really want the memories too. I really want the time to, you know, not just blur through it. Because I think when I was nursing and when I was like a newer mom and they were little and it was just like so much, I think it's harder to remember. You know, your brain purposefully washes a lot of that. There are a lot of things that people remind me of and I'm like, oh, was that around that time? Yeah, I'm not going to remember that. So I'm like, maybe these years, if I like take a breath and I'm present, I can actually lock in here a little bit. And it's important times for us.
Yeah. I have a question going back to what you were saying about like when you were super pregnant and Mike took over these things. Totally resonates with me of like, no, this is my responsibilities and being so into it, and then realizing like, oh, I can just hand this off and it's just fine. That resonates with me. As we all know, there are so many tasks and responsibilities in keeping something running. How much is this delegation of responsibilities is intentional versus like just circumstantial? Do you guys sit and actually like carve out like, hey, this is my strength? You guys have been at it for so long. Like, have you guys done that over the years, or has it just kind of been more by happenstance what works?
Well, I think Mike's been doing so much, particularly because I had that job too. So it was like the kids, the job. And now the past like few months, I've been like, I am here. Remember, like I know how to do all of this shit. Like, am I not doing this now for a reason, or just because you forgot that I know how to do it? So like we're having to really reassign me certain things now. And we kind of were like, just so it's not a mess, what would be a clean line? And I was like, well, maybe I can be like advancing shows because you're so far into the future booking them, and I'll just be like the short range gal. I'll be like,
Yeah.
hotels, tour book, that kind of stuff. And like, is there backline and who's on our guest list and stuff. But he still doesn't send it to me and does it.
Yeah.
Because you guys are like completely independent, right? So you're handling your releases and booking yourself and managing yourself.
And publicity and social media and all the stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We've never even really worked with a producer on a record.
No.
We were staunchly independent for better or for worse. I don't know. I mean, we have had agents before, and we have a non-exclusive situation, which gets us one really good gig a year, usually. Ish.
It's enough to not part ways.
Yeah. But
is my attitude. It's like, okay, I'll take that one great gig a year.
But we're going to...
Even though there's a fair amount of frustration in that relationship as well.
But we definitely do a lot of things. So there's plenty of things to split up between us.
One thing that we never did, though, and we made this conscious decision, was we never started a podcast together, which is something that you guys are doing, which is kind of amazing. And I remember...
This was a self-interested question for sure.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you. And it's funny because we actually had a publicist friend out in LA.
Years ago,
like
she was
15
like,
or 20
podcast,
years ago.
podcast.
She's like, you guys should start a podcast. And she was absolutely right. I mean, I do have a podcast, not in music, but I think I told you, Michaela, it's like in the health and wellness space, which is kind of random. But I love podcast life. I love the scene. I love the field. It's like the Wild West still. But I remember Ruthie saying when Allison suggested we do a podcast together, Ruth's like, no, like we do everything else together. Like I'm drawing the line somewhere. Like
I don't remember
and
this
you even
conversation.
Said, like, you could
I
do
was
a
probably
podcast.
nursing a baby. I was like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, kind of.
I was like, I'm not.
She's like, go nuts and start a podcast. Or maybe you were going to start like the mother-parent podcast or something like that.
Yeah.
But she's like, no more collaborative thing. Is like everything else in our life is collaborative.
Yeah, like let's do a new thing together.
Like our working relationship started with me just playing in her band. And we were very deliberate from the beginning of like, I'm playing in your band. Like I didn't want her to feel like she needed to hire me just because I was her boyfriend/husband,
Yeah.
And then I also didn't want her to get mad at me because I like messed up the bridge to her song when she's really mad at me because like I didn't do the dishes or whatever. It's like, so we kept that very separate. And then it evolved into me producing her records, which is still like me in service to her and her songs and her art. So this is really the first thing that we've done.
That's like together.
They're like equals.
We're like, if there's a disagreement, it's not very clear who gets to say the answer.
Yeah, everything else I'm wrong. And this one, it's like maybe both of us are wrong.
I will say though that with this podcast, it's very much like we separated tasks based on our strengths. Like I am so not interested in anything tech or like production, anything. So Aaron does all of it. So in some ways, like I would maybe yield a little more to Aaron in this situation because he does a lot of the nitty gritty work that like I could never do if I wanted to do a podcast by myself. So I feel very much like he does a lot of the heavy lifting. I do like the A&R, like I do like
outreach,
the booking. Yes. But even this project is like, we're 3 years in and I reflect back like the conversations we have and the mission of this podcast to like influence how we handle the work of this podcast. Because literally like 2 days ago, we're like, can we handle this anymore? Having a second kid, like this is so much work. And just like any creative work endeavor, entrepreneurial, it costs money before it makes money.
But the exposure is great.
Yeah, but the exposure. We definitely are like, should we stop at the end of this year? Can we manage this? How are we doing this? Do we need to reconfigure our schedule? Like, it's just a whole other thing to have the same discussions we have about music. And end of the day, it's kind of similar to music of like, what do we get out of this? Like, we get to have conversations that are really fulfilling for us. Yeah. Anytime that we're like, should we not do this anymore? It's when we're in the brunt of like booking and emails and the tedium. And then we sit on a conversation and we're just like, oh yeah, this is great.
I mean, and that's exactly like us throwing our festival, like at the festival every year. Like, this is why we do all that stuff. And the rest of the year, we're like, why are we doing this? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Again with this, and then you're there and you're like, oh, the people, they're having a good time. Yeah, you have to have faith in the low moments.
It makes me come back to like in music, these are the only realms that I know. I don't know what else is out there that I'm sure there's plenty of other fields that people would relate this to, but it always comes back to the people. For me, like playing music is so enjoyable yes, I love music, but I love playing music for people and being with other musicians and hearing other music. And there's a bunch of other bullshit we have to go through to get those moments. And same with the podcast. My favorite part is like the actually connecting to people and having this structured conversation that allows us to go to spaces that maybe we wouldn't if we were just sitting at catering at a festival. Maybe we would, you don't know. But like, it's really just like the avenues to have more and deeper human connection.
That's true. And I remembered one thing which you were kind of just pointing out, like how we are in a way in service to the audience and to the like a feedback loop of energy. And also you were talking about like being like, I'm in her band and I'm in service to her project. But I was thinking about that with our band. We don't really have that, but we do with each song. Like it's my song or his song. Very rarely is it really 50-50, like, and we're serving the song. And the song is somebody's baby, but it's really like we try to serve each song.
Yeah, like I'm the set list guy. I actually spend a lot of time thinking about set lists and night to night. I don't like to make a set list till like I arrive at the place and sort of get a gauge on what the feel is like and what's going to be like. And I'll show it to Ruth right before we hit the stage and she'll be like, it's like 6 Ruth songs in a row. I'm like, yeah, but it's a great show.
He does tend to front load the set list with my songs these days, like hardcore. I'm like, okay, I hope I'm warmed up to 6 in a row.
But it's like I said, it's about the song. It's about each individual song. I guess even though we write individually, they go into this pot called the Mammals, and then you just use like the strongest hand that you got in that moment. I don't really think about it as my song, your song. These are just Mammals songs.
Once they're in a set and you're making a set list, I guess I was more thinking like, I feel like the only time it matters like who's serving who is like when there's a conflict. If it's like, I told you to cut that verse of a song and you're like, it's not happening because it's your song. I'm like, okay, never mind. You know, that's maybe a very plain example, but also if you're like arranging something or whatever and you're just like, I don't feel like this is the right drum feel, or I don't know, should there be organ or not? Sometimes you let a song go that you wrote because it's in good hands and you're not like controlling it. But if something pops up and it's your song.
Yeah, it's like, who's the final decision maker?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. Like, I like to say, like, there's too many sheep and not enough shepherds. Like, there needs to be somebody that is the final say. Like, no matter what, no matter how collaborative it is, I think there needs to be somebody that, like, it's understood this is the final decision, even if we were a duo.
So you guys are like, okay, if it's a Mike song, if we get into a disagreement, Mike gets final say. If it's a Ruthie song, Ruthie gets final say.
And we don't even really get there because it's already obvious. And I guess, you know, then there's the decisions around like that tour that we almost kept, even without the financial anchor. And it was just like, if we do it the following year, we can really plan it great and it'll be good. But we definitely took the 20 or 30 minutes to map it out 2 or 3 ways of still doing it this year. Like, well, what if this was before that? And then we go around this. Like, we just mapped it all out and just did all this thought and then let it go. And I think there wasn't a moment where I was going to be like, well, I'm putting my foot down. We're not doing it. I don't know. We're both really good at like pro and con, like A and B, sitting with indecision long enough to be like, okay, either one of these, we'll figure it out. Like we could have done the tour. It would have been fine. But I think we're both happy that we are doing it another time. And we do have a bunch of gigs coming up in July. We have some stuff to look forward to in the fall. And, you know, we have plenty going on. So,
we've kind of come to a place like that. I like to say it's like, yes, we can do that, but like, should we? You know, it's like, we're very capable people. You know, we've been touring for long enough. We've been in the grind for long enough. It's like, yeah, we can grind this out and it'll be fine. And it's not going to kill us and it's not going to make us crazy. Like but like,
do we want to?
Yeah. Like, what if we didn't, you know? What if we just took the easy path? At which point we both sit there and go, what's that?
That's boring.
What's that?
How do you do that?
I kind of wanted to shift a little bit and just talk about where you guys are, the scene that you guys have literally grown up in, but then also are in, like, in the music that you guys make and that we make, roots music, folk music, Americana, like the Hudson Valley is known. You know, Ruth, growing up in the family you grew up in, having you guys perform with Pete Seeger and all of that, does either like the family that you've grown up in or the scene that you are a part of, is that intimidating ever? Do you guys feel like imposter syndrome ever? Do you feel a weight of having to carry this tradition or this sound, you know, does that weigh on your creativity, responsibility, or is that like a sense of pride and inspiration?
It's a good question. There's this whole links in the chain element to folk music and like passing of the torch. And I honor that and welcome that and enjoy that element of it. Honestly, with the world being so upside down, especially the last 5 years, this is going to sound horrible, but I feel like much of the scene has imposter syndrome. And I'm like, where the F did everybody go? That's kind of how I feel has happened to the folk scene in terms of like really digging deep and creating truthful work that is non-divisive. I see the scene really breaking into a left-right dichotomy because, you know, folk music is synonymous with like protest songs and political elements. And I've felt very abandoned by it, honestly. And so it's funny to use that term imposter syndrome because I know exactly what you mean. But I've been kind of at a loss to try and figure out how we ended up where we are. And it seems like a lot of our compatriots aren't necessarily on the same road anymore. So that's something that I've been grappling with.
Can you elaborate a little bit? Do you mean like they've gone away from social commentary rhetoric within their music, or?
I think maybe what Mike's getting at is something that's even broader than music and more like how isolated and bubble-like we've become, you know, people just on social media and in echo chambers where everybody thinks the same as them and anybody who doesn't is terrible. I think there's a lot of that atmosphere and context to what you're talking about, maybe. And then the feeling when we were in our early 20s was we were very supported. I don't remember ever feeling imposter syndrome, except that I can't play the fiddle as good as my dad. And I wish I could. And I never will. And I know it. And every time I play it, if someone said that was good, I'm like, I know it was not compared to what I wish it sounded like. But that's okay. I've grappled with that little specific imposter syndrome. But yeah, as far as like being a representative of the music and some of the parts of your original question, like I feel like that's the part that's really positive. That I feel really connected. I feel really supported. I feel that at Ashokan, we're trying to teach people how to like pick up these instruments and play them and telling people like, don't feel like an imposter, like pick it up, do it. Somebody's got to play that banjo. Might as well be you. Like everybody should be invited to do it. And then I think where you're coming from is almost more like the topical part, like the songwriter-y part and like the message, right?
Sure.
Like not about the whether you play clawhammer or three-finger style banjo. You're talking about when we started out, we were rabble-rousing and Mike had a song, you know, like an anti-war song in the George W. Bush era that got us in a whole lot of trouble on tour because we came from the bubble of the Northeast where it was folk festivals and everybody was singing anti-war songs and it was just like normal. And then we like traveled with Arlo Guthrie and like opened for him in places like Louisiana and Northern Michigan and people walked right up in the front and gave us the finger.
Oh, wow.
They were like, you can't sing against our commander in chief, that kind of stuff. And we were like, oh, like the country's big and we're young and naive. And so we learned a lot. And then we started to try to sing about what we were for instead of what we're against and sing more to manifest good things and really put a lot of effort into that. And I think that like some of the stuff that we have come to think about in the past 3 or 4 or 5 years a little bit differently now, we haven't even fully put into song yet. But we just feel this like pressure almost to fit in with a left-right binary that we don't really agree with anymore. And then we're very much into like, well, what song can we write that really is universal, that really still is true to us? What things can we say on stage that feel really true to us that will still resonate with like the classic Mammals fan perhaps, or folky, but that might also reach across some imagined fucking line that doesn't exist and remind other people out there that we're here for everybody. It's really hard to say it. There was a time when nobody was on tour. We were just sitting around our house, not allowed to do anything. We ended up hanging out with our neighbors who we never would have thought we hung out with based on the political signs they put up. And then that's who was kind to us. So we won't forget that. And, you know, maybe that's just a tiny sliver of maybe some of what you were talking about.
I think so. I mean, just to hit the nail on the head, people will come up to me and be like, you know, where's your anti-Trump song? And I'm like, I will never write that song. I wouldn't say this to them, but internally I'm thinking that's not a productive use of my time. That's just creating more division. I would like to write the song that creates more unity and community building and ideas about decentralization and thriving in small groups. But
healing
frankly, like
Energy.
I'm so over the mainstream culture that it's just this energy suck. And so I've stopped giving my energy to it. I basically ignore it. It takes work to ignore it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I find that that's a big part of why I'm much happier these days, is because I stopped trying to like bang my head against that brick wall that for a lot of my career, I did bang my head against it kind of willingly. Like I felt it was my obligation. Not only is it not productive, but I don't see it actually making a difference. And so it's like Ruth said, I think we're still trying to figure out how to thread that needle and be true to ourselves and our muse and our creativity and kind of take our audience along with us, because I don't want to alienate anybody either. So as I generally say when this conversation of politics comes up, and of course the political is the personal, my politics have gone full Utah Phillips, if you know who Utah Phillips is. He's an old bearded folk singer storyteller who passed away maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Ani DeFranco made a record with him called The Past Didn't Go Anywhere. He basically was a card-carrying, quote-unquote, anarchist voluntarist who believed that all interactions between men and women should be voluntary and without threat of violence or coercion. And I didn't really know what that meant when I was young. It just kind of sounded cool. But now as an adult, I know exactly what that means. And I've really embraced that. And frankly, the biggest culprit against those principles is organized government. They have a monopoly on violence. They have a monopoly on coercion. And as I become in my middle age here, I realize I don't want anything to do with that. So I'm trying to build a world outside of that box. But we're all brought up in a paradigm where we don't realize there even is an outside to that box. So it's a really interesting challenge and journey intellectually and creatively to figure out how to present these ideas in a way that makes sense to people. Because when I say what I just said to you, that line, I'll use that as an intro to a song. I'll get like a round of applause and sometimes a standing ovation just for presenting that idea. But then when you take it the next step, that means that the biggest culprit is the US government. Then people sit down. They go, oh, wait, I didn't realize that that's what you're insinuating. It's really interesting terrain to be exploring. But that's what I mean. It's like, I feel like that is my job as a folk singer. That line of Woody Guthrie to a folk song should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. And we live in such unprecedented times right now that it's no small thing to disturb the comfortable. It's a really big deal. And so I'm not trying to disturb anybody necessarily, but I am trying to keep it real. And I'm finding that it's a really narrow pathway to walk in the times of cancel culture, in the times of like real knee-jerk reactions to anything that someone dares to sort of go out and say that's outside of the standard talking points. So I guess that's what I mean, is that I'm feeling a little bit marooned these days as an artist, but it's actually a really wonderful challenge to forge my path in this scene that we've been in for so long with a lot of like cherished friends and community, and to be myself. That's a struggle that I'm navigating.
Maybe to try and bring it around to like the Hudson Valley and the history of this place that you asked about a little bit. That question could have been about like playing music or about like political songwriting, which this area is known for all of it.
Yeah.
I will say there was a time when we're far away, we say we're from Woodstock. Of course, we live in West Hurley, which is near there. And it's a place that's very storied and legendary. And people think of it in different ways when you go out in the world. And, you know, I think we're proud to somewhat, you know, represent whatever the face of that is. My dad being a fiddle player who grew up in the Bronx and traveled around and learned a lot of different styles and learned from a lot of older fiddlers in the Hudson Valley. And square dancing was a thing here. And Pete and Toshi met at a square dance, you know, and I think there's a certain amount just to the tunes and the merging of like kind of northern New England and southern Appalachian and like that. It's a nice place in between all of them, really. So I really treasure that. I'm trying to play more tunes with my dad. That's another thing I have a little more time to do these days. And he lives right next door. And our son, who's 17, came home from music camp last week saying he's a bass player. And he's like, I have to be an old time fiddler by the next time I go back there. Because like when you show up at the jam and there's already a bass, what else can I do? You know? So,
Yeah. Plus, for anybody that's been on that island, if you're trying to carry an upright bass across that island in the dark, it's going to be a hell of a walk.
That too. So he's stoked. He's been playing every day, and we played with my dad the other day on Father's Day, and you know, learning these tunes and keeping that chain going of just like getting people on their feet, easy square dances. Like my childhood, my dad was calling dances at weddings, and he's not a dance caller, but he's good enough to do that at a wedding. And then I learned those same like 3 or 4 dances. And I'll do that at a wedding or at a gathering. People go home with these memories because they were at this wedding and they danced with old, Uncle Jack and Aunt Clara. And you'll never believe what happened at this wedding, And just like when you're a really talented dance caller, you can call for experienced dancers. And when you're me or my dad, you can call for kids, drunks, and beginners, which is, that's where the fun is. And this music is meant to be cathartic and fun and easy entry point for all humans of all ages and any kind of background. And so to me, that's where, the real pride is that I think you asked about earlier. I do feel proud to know that and to pass that on and to have kids who will get up and square dance or make their friends do it with them. Or, Yeah, I think it was 5th grade. I can remember doing square dancing in gym. And it was embarrassing, embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
Same.
And it was to a record. I had to pretend I didn't know because it was so uncool. It was so uncool that I went to square dances on the weekends and no one knew that. And I wasn't going to let them know that. And the teacher was teaching the shit wrong. I was such a kid who would have wanted to
some bizarre
correct her, but I didn't correct her because then they'd know that I knew what a do-si-do was supposed to really look like. But like my kids aren't like that. Like they want to do it. They're into it. Like to me, that's a huge point of pride to just feel like we're keeping something going for another generation. There's a square dance that's like kind of late night at the Hoot for just like anyone to try. It's not about being amazing at it.
I mean, I love that kind of like continuous lineage and tying back to what I was hearing Mike say. I think like we live in this particular time where, yes, there's so much going on, so much like bombarding us all the time, so much unprecedented times over and over and over again. And as artists, we have to grapple with what are the messages that we want to share? What do we think our responsibility is? What do we feel aligns with us like soulfully, spiritually? And then what are the things that we're told we have to do to be able to make this a career and to survive in this way? And if that's a part of it, then, you don't want to alienate people and you got to be on social media and you got to participate in all these things that maybe doesn't align with you. And then what you really want is to have these person-to-person nuanced conversations where you're not just a box of, we think of Mike and Ruthie and the Mammals as lefty folkies, so they should write an anti-Trump song, where you're like, well, actually, life is so much more nuanced than that. But we don't operate right now societally in systems that allow for that depth. And I think and I hope that that's why small shows where you can be in conversation with an audience, camps and festivals where you're in small community is actually where that can happen, and not on social media and not in massive arenas. We have such a window into everything happening in the world all the time through our phones that it can take work to be like, I want to focus on this small part. Like you said, we have this conversation a lot this year of getting so overwhelmed with what's happening in the world, what's happening in the government, how it could impact us, how it impacts our neighbors. And okay, what can we control? We can impact our children's lives, our neighbors' lives, our friends' circle. But that is kind of going against the grain these days, to really focus on that and be like, this is okay. I don't have to be so broad all the time.
Yeah, it's the micro versus the macro. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's hyper-localism.
And the scale.
In the scale.
Where you can actually make a connection.
I mean, one of the beautiful silver linings of the lockdown era was before that, I found that we were traveling around the world speaking about localism, but we weren't actually doing a lot of it. And then when we were actually sort of stuck at home, we had no choice but to go deep local and like meet the neighbors, share vegetables, start a garden, grow some mushrooms. And that's been the best years of my life so far.
Yeah, so. Mike likes to say he never had put a seed in the dirt until 2020.
It was 2021.
Wow, we waited, way long. We kept thinking any minute we're back on tour. Like any minute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, here we go. But I mean, that's totally true. I grew up hearing the saying, think globally, act locally. And it never clicked until recent years. I'm like, oh, this is what it means. It's like right here. And it's like, you get into the whole, like, it's the butterfly flaps its wings and it resonates and it ripples out. It's that. You work in your circle of influence, which has like a Venn diagram with your neighbor's circle of influence, which has, talk about the links in a chain from folk music. I mean, folk music is a representation of folk life and our life.
Yes. We're into actual analog chains and not the digital ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I know we are at time. We have to wrap up. One thing that I think of often is Eric Ward is he's a Southern Poverty Law Fellow and a kind of leading voice on like expert of white nationalism. And I got to do some work with him when he was the director of Western State Center, a nonprofit organization in Oregon that promotes inclusive democracy and fights anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism. And he had all these cohorts with folk musicians. And he talked about the gift of the artist is that artists have the ability to imagine a new future. So communicating that through songs is the role that we can play. Not every artist wants to, not every musician wants to, but for those who are called to it, that is a great possibility. And he talked a lot about how impacting social change that they would find in their studies, that the kind of regional, local, smaller artists they believed had more cultural impact than a massively huge audience sharing something on their platform. But those artists that have person-to-person relationships with the people who enjoy their music can actually impact great change. And I think of that often when I can get pulled into the career and business messages of, am I successful enough? Am I doing enough because I have a small fan base? And go back to that kind of rooting in your value system versus the value system that's imposed on us from capitalism.
Yeah. I always have said, because my parents are musicians, that a niche group of people know until Ken Burns' Civil War series, where my dad's tune was the main theme of that PBS documentary, they weren't really a household name. And even now, I wouldn't say, certain PBS household name. But where I'm going with this is just like people growing up, I don't think understood just the life of a working musician, what that is. People think if you're a musician, either you make it or you fail. Like those are the only two options that people have ever heard of for some reason. And I'm like, okay, what if you were a florist? Like you might do well. You're not going to be like, oh, I've never heard of you. I'm sorry. Like, no, it's like, okay, great. Here's my card. I do flowers. Now you've heard of me. Like, why do you have to feel shitty that this is the first time you're meeting or hearing? I've had this conversation so many times. I'm like, it's cool. Yeah, you can do well. You can do terribly. There's like a whole spectrum in there. It's not just making it or failing. There's a lot in between. And in any other line of work, you wouldn't expect such wild, huge successes just to feel good about yourself. Like, if you can like support yourself and your small family and do well and like pay your band or your couple employees in your flower shop or whatever it is and like do a thing that is appreciated by the community and get good reviews on Yelp and people tell their friends about you, like that's great. That should be enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you have really good years and you have started down years and then you have everything else. Yeah,
I love that.
It's real.
It is. Yeah.
We're out here. We still exist. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we like to have these conversations, to show that there's not one way. And a lot of times that idea can impact our emotional and mental health way more than it should be.
Yeah. Wasn't it Daniel Quinn who said there's more than one way to live?
That's right.
That's one of Mike's favorite authors and a quote that hits my head every once in a while again.
Yeah.
More than one way to live.
Absolutely is. On ways to live, it kind of ties into how we like to wrap up all these conversations. That's by asking for you guys to share either something that somebody has told you along the way that resonates in your head, that has been an inspiration, a North Star or of sense, or conversely, if you want, you can share something that maybe you would tell like younger you that was first hopping in the van and trying to make this work.
I think about that once in a while, like what I would impart to, a group of high school kids if I was asked to speak in front of them or something. And I think it's really important, as cliche as it might sound, to follow your dreams and to follow your bliss, because the road does rise up to meet you in very unexpected ways. I think it's also important to remember that the thing that you imagine yourself doing, it might not actually be that way in reality. But as long as you're on the road to what makes you happy, to spend as much of your time pursuing that ideal as possible, only good things can come in its wake.
Absolutely.
I like that. I think another thing that Mike has said a lot in response to this kind of a thing that just popped into my head is that your friends are the key too.
Oh, that's another Utah Phillips line.
Well, when you go and play some house concerts or stay at your friend's house or whatever, like especially as a musician getting started, you go to the town where you have friends. You play the towns where you know people. You just build off of that. There are towns where the friends no longer live there, but now we have fans there. But it was originally because my friend lived in that town that we played there the first time. And then, it's a reciprocal thing. When you go on tour and you stay with friends or you thrive off them spreading the word in towns, and then you do that when they come to your town, they stay in your house and you get to feed them and you get to tell everybody to go to their show, and it feels great.
Yeah.
Build your tour around your friends.
For sure.
Oh, I totally
or your
do
podcast.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like, where can we stay for free? Okay, we're going to play those places.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here resonating. Like, you put the two together and it's like hit the nail on the head in the most simple way. Do what you know, go where you know, and do what you love. Cool.
With the people you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for taking time this afternoon to sit with us and chat with us.
Yeah, that flew by.
It
Yeah,
really
it's an
did.
honor, you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you for including us on your show.
All right, guys, take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to all of you who subscribe to our Patreon or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get our show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do that right now, and we'll see you back here next week.